In this video, we want to create a console application in Visual Studio Code. If we open up our Visual Studio Code environment, this is a much more simplistic environment for creating applications. We don't have as many features as what we have in Visual Studio 2022 as far as being able to move windows, but this is our one environment that is cross-platform between Mac OS and Windows. If we go ahead and click on the Explorer, so again, we have the Explorer, we have our source control, we have our search, we have our extensions, and you should have like a bug that I don't seem to have. As I indicated in previous videos, I lost my bug, so I have to run and debug throughout my menu here as opposed to click on the bug. If you click on the bug, then there's a button there that you can just basically hit, and that's a much better solution for debugging. Sometimes I can make it show up and other times not. It's not necessarily important for this particular walkthrough. I'm going to go ahead and create an application. We're going to start out with creating an application that we can submit. This is going to be our greeting that if you choose to create the console application in Visual Studio Code, doesn't really matter, should work in whatever environment. Now, when I go through this, I'm going to click on the Explorer, click on the Create.NET project, and then enter console because there's quite a few templates here. Start typing in the word, and it's going to bring up console app. Notice I don't necessarily get a choice this time. I only have the one option to pick, so I'm going to go ahead and click on it. It's going to ask me for a location that I want to store this, and I'm going to pick my oh so lovely junk folder to put it in. This is not necessarily something I'm going to want to keep around, so I have a junk folder. I'm just going to add it to my junk folder. When I do that, it's going to come up and it's going to ask me what my project name is. So typically we have a dialog. We gave it the greeting for our project name. We're going to go ahead and give it the same name. So this is going to be greeting. Once I enter that, I hit enter, and I can just go through and simply at this point hit enter because I have my create project highlighted, and it's going to go ahead and create my project. Now, typically when we're used to dealing with Visual Studio Code environments that are not with C#, we use the top portion of the screen. This is going to give us all the files that we have and everything else that we're typically familiar with. However, when we're dealing with C#, we want to be able to use our Solution Explorer. So this is going to give us all of the features that we really need to be using. Notice I have my program file. Notice it's only generating that one statement and using that newer format for the implied main method. I can go ahead at this point, if I want to look at this a little bit more in depth. I have my dependencies. Notice I have frameworks similar to what we saw before. I have analyzers similar to what we saw before. Everything from within this project structure is set up exactly like within Visual Studio 2022. And we're going to start playing some games where we're opening things in different solutions at the end of this video. So in this case, I just want to go ahead and I want to build my solution. Well, guess what? If I'm in my Solution Explorer, I can right click and I have a build, rebuild, and clean. These are options that typically we have within Visual Studio 2022. Now we have them within Visual Studio Code. So this is going to allow me to build my solution. So I can go ahead and hit the build. It's going to go out. You can see it's connecting and using Java to do this. And pretty much at this point, it's done. So Java's ready. It's all ready to go. So it's depending on Java to actually utilize and provide us with our C# applications within Visual Studio Code. Now, if I come up and run it, typically, as I said, you're going to use the bug. If you're experiencing the same issue that I am, just go ahead and hit the Start Debugging. It's going to ask you what you're debugging. Click on the C#, click on the greeting, and off it goes. We can see Hello World, similar to what we did before. I can change this to Jenny, which is the qualification for the assignment. I can save it, and I can go ahead and start debugging again. And voila, I've completed my project. Now, what is interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and close my folder. That's going to shut it down. I'm going to go over to Visual Studio 2022. I have my last solution still up. I'm going to close this solution, but I'm interested to see whether I can open up the solution that I created in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go and use my Open a Project or Solution. I'm going to go to my junk folder. I have my solution file. I'm going to double click it. It's loading. I can open my file that I created in Visual Studio Code, and I can run my application over there. So it is something that I can go between the two IDEs. Let's try it the other way around. Let's open up the solution that we created, and we need to open up our folder, and this is the default folder location. So this is going to be C users, your computer name, mine's Jenny, source, repos, and then if I go here, it was the greeting. We can try both of them. I'm going to try greeting 1. There's my Explorer. There's my program. I can run this. And it works the same. So let's go ahead and take greeting 2 now. So I'm going to go ahead and close the folder, open up the folder location, going back to the same repo. Open this folder. Where I double click on it to open it in Visual Studio 2022, I just open the folder in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to minimize this, expand my solution. We can see our program. If we go ahead and run it, we have to pick our C#, our name of our file, and it works exactly the same way. So a little bit simpler interface for creating console applications, and quite frankly, there's no real benefit necessarily for using Visual Studio 2022 for console applications over Visual Studio Code, but when we look at our .NET MAUI, we will see that there is an advantage in using Visual Studio 2022 over Visual Studio Code if you're not a code monkey. And we'll take a look at what that looks like.